By 2032, 70% of all job applications will never be seen by human eyes. Your next career move might be decided in 3 seconds by an algorithm you'll never meet.
And here's what most people don't realize. The AI isn't just reading your resume. It's analyzing your voice patterns, your word choices, even the pauses between your sentences.
We're talking about systems that can process 10,000 applications in the time it takes you to drink your morning coffee. That's already happening at major companies right now.
I actually tested this last month. Applied to 20 positions, got instant rejections from 15. No explanation, no feedback, just gone.
Exactly, and that's the thing that keeps me up at night. Because we're not talking about some distant sci-fi future. This is happening right now, and by 2032, it's going to be everywhere.
The technology exists today. Natural language processing, sentiment analysis, predictive modeling. Companies are already using it because it saves millions in hiring costs.
But here's what's interesting. The data shows something unexpected. AI recruiters aren't necessarily worse than humans, they're just biased in different ways.
Today we're diving into something that's going to affect every single person listening. Whether you're looking for a job now or 10 years from now, you need to understand how these systems work, what they're really looking for, and honestly, how to game them if you need to.
Yeah, because, look, I'm not saying it's right, but there are ways to make yourself more attractive to these algorithms. And some of them are kind of wild.
We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the surprisingly weird parts of AI recruitment. The efficiency gains are real, but so are the ethical landmines.
And I've got data that's going to challenge some assumptions. Because when you actually look at the numbers, human recruiters have their own massive blind spots that we conveniently ignore.
So let's start at the beginning. Iris, when we talk about AI recruiters in 2032, what exactly are we dealing with here?
Right, so we need to distinguish between what exists now and what's coming. Currently, most companies use what's called applicant tracking systems, or ATS. These are fairly basic. They scan for keywords, check if you have the right qualifications, filter out obvious mismatches.
Like a bouncer at a club checking IDs.
Exactly. But by 2032, we're looking at something much more sophisticated. We're talking about systems that use advanced natural language processing to understand context, not just keywords. They'll analyze your entire digital footprint, your social media presence, your communication style, even your professional network patterns.
And the evolution is exponential, not linear. A study from MIT published in 2023 showed that AI systems improved their candidate job matching accuracy by 47% in just 18 months. That's a faster improvement curve than we saw with almost any other AI application.
Wait, so these systems are learning what makes a good employee by analyzing what exactly? Past hires?
That's part of it, yes. They analyze successful employees, how long they stayed, their performance reviews, their career progression. Then they build a model of what a successful candidate looks like.
Which sounds great in theory, but
it's a garbage in, garbage out situation. If your past successful hires were mostly from certain schools, certain backgrounds, certain demographics, the AI learns that pattern. It doesn't question whether that pattern is actually predictive or just historical bias.
Oh yeah, I've seen this. There was that case with Amazon, right? They built a recruiting AI that ended up penalizing resumes with the word women's on them, like women's chess club or women's college.
That was 2018, and Amazon scrapped the system. But it perfectly illustrates the problem. The AI wasn't sexist in any intentional way. It just learned from historical data that showed men were more likely to be hired and succeed at Amazon, particularly in technical roles.
so it basically automated their existing bias.
Precisely. And this is the central tension we're going to be dealing with in 2032. These systems are incredibly efficient. They can process applications faster, more consistently, without getting tired or having a bad day. But they can also encode and amplify existing inequalities at scale.
Although, and I want to push back on this narrative a bit, human recruiters aren't exactly bias-free paragons of fairness. Studies consistently show that identical resumes get different response rates based on whether the name sounds white or black, male or female, young or old.
Totally. Like, we act like AI bias is this new problem, but we've always had bias in hiring. It's just been hidden behind the veneer of human judgment.
Fair point. So maybe the question isn't whether AI recruiters are biased, but whether they're more or less biased than humans?
It's more complicated than that, though, because AI bias and human bias work differently. A human recruiter might have unconscious bias, but they can also be convinced, educated, or have a gut feeling that overrides their initial impression. And AI just follows its programming.
But humans are also wildly inconsistent. There's research showing that the same recruiter will rate the same candidate differently depending on whether they just had lunch or if they're tired. AI doesn't have those fluctuations.
Okay, so we've got efficiency versus fairness, consistency versus flexibility. Elias, you mentioned you have data that challenges assumptions. What are we missing here?
Well, here's something interesting. A comprehensive study from Stanford in 2024 tracked hiring outcomes over 5 years at companies using AI versus traditional methods. And the results were mixed, but not in the way you'd expect.
Wait, mixed how?
AI recruited employees had slightly lower retention rates in the first year, about 8% lower. But, and this is the surprising part, those who stayed past 18 months actually had higher performance ratings and faster career progression than traditionally hired employees.
That makes sense, actually. The AI might be filtering out people who are great at interviews but mediocre at the actual job. It's looking at different signals.
So it's like the AI is finding diamonds in the rough that human recruiters would pass over?
In some cases, yes. There were multiple examples of candidates from non-traditional backgrounds, people who didn't go to prestigious schools or didn't have perfectly linear career paths, who were hired by AI systems and went on to excel.
But then why the lower retention in the first year?
Cultural fit, probably. The AI can assess skills and potential, but it's not as good at evaluating whether someone will mesh with the team dynamic or company culture.
Exactly. And this is where it gets ethically complicated, because what we call cultural fit is often just code for people who look and think like the people already there.
So we're back to bias, just a different flavor of it.
Ugh, this is making my head hurt. Like every solution creates a new problem.
Let's talk about what it actually feels like to go through an AI recruitment process. Daphne, you mentioned you tested this. Walk us through it.
Okay, so it was honestly kind of surreal. I applied to this tech company, got an immediate email saying my application was received. Within like 2 hours, I got another email inviting me to complete a video interview.
A video interview with an AI?
Yeah, but here's the weird part. It wasn't a conversation. The system asked me pre-recorded questions, and I had to record my answers. I'm sitting there, talking to my laptop screen, and there's this timer counting down. 30 seconds to think, 2 minutes to answer.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
It was. And you know what kept running through my mind? I wasn't thinking about my actual answer. I was thinking, what does the AI want to hear? Should I smile more? Should I make more eye contact with the camera? Use certain keywords?
You were performing for an algorithm.
Exactly. And the thing is, I don't even know what it was analyzing. Was it my words, my tone, my facial expressions? The system gave me zero feedback. Just, thanks for your submission, we'll be in touch.
This is actually a major concern in the field. These AI systems are often black boxes, even to the companies using them. The candidates have no idea what criteria they're being judged on, and sometimes the hiring managers don't fully understand it either.
There was a case study from 2023, I think it was Unilever, where they used an AI system that analyzed micro-expressions during video interviews. And it turned out the AI was penalizing people who were nervous, which disproportionately affected candidates from underrepresented backgrounds who might be less comfortable in interview settings.
Wait, so being nervous about a job interview, which is like completely normal and human, became a disqualifying factor?
In that system, yes. They eventually revised it, but it shows how these tools can measure things that aren't actually relevant to job performance.
Ugh, see, this is what terrifies me about 2032. If this is what we're dealing with now, with relatively basic systems, what happens when the AI gets way more sophisticated? When it can analyze things we're not even consciously aware of?
Well, there are two schools of thought on this. One perspective is that more sophisticated AI will actually be better at filtering out irrelevant signals. It'll focus on what truly predicts success rather than surface-level markers.
And the other perspective?
The other perspective is that sophisticated AI will just find more subtle ways to discriminate. It'll learn to identify proxy variables for things like race, gender, age, socioeconomic background, even if those variables aren't explicitly in the data.
There's actually fascinating research on this from Berkeley. They found that AI systems could infer protected characteristics with scary accuracy just from writing style, word choice patterns, and communication preferences, even when that information was deliberately removed from applications.
Okay, that's actually horrifying.
So even if we scrub resumes of names, addresses, graduation dates, the AI can still figure out who you are?
Not who you are specifically, but your demographic profile, yeah. And here's the kicker, this isn't necessarily malicious. The AI isn't trying to discriminate. It's just really, really good at finding patterns in data.
Which brings us back to the fundamental question. If AI can identify these patterns, should it use them, even if they're statistically predictive?
What do you mean by statistically predictive?
Well, let's say the AI notices that candidates who use certain communication styles tend to stay longer at the company, but that communication style is more common among certain demographic groups. Should the AI use that pattern, even though it has disparate impact?
I mean, no, right? That's discrimination.
But is it? If the pattern genuinely predicts better outcomes for the company, and the AI isn't explicitly looking at race or gender, is it discrimination or just effective screening?
Elias, come on. You can't seriously be defending this.
I'm not defending it. I'm saying the ethical lines are blurrier than we pretend they are. Human recruiters make these same kinds of judgments all the time. They just don't admit it or even realize they're doing it.
But there's a difference between one person making a biased decision and a system making thousands of biased decisions instantly and consistently.
That's exactly right. Scale matters. When a human recruiter has unconscious bias, it affects maybe hundreds of candidates over their career. When an AI has that same bias encoded, it can affect millions of candidates in a year.
Okay, so let's get practical here. If you're a job seeker in 2032, dealing with these AI systems, what do you actually do? Do you just accept that the algorithm decides your fate?
Well, here's what I did, and I'm curious what you all think about this ethically. I started optimizing my resume specifically for AI systems.
Optimizing how?
Keyword stuffing, basically. I analyzed job descriptions, identified the most common phrases and requirements, and made sure my resume included all of them, even if I had to embellish a little.
Wait, you lied on your resume?
I wouldn't call it lying, more like strategic framing. If they want someone with project management experience, and I've managed projects informally, I'm going to describe it using official project management terminology.
This is actually a massive issue. There's already an entire industry of resume optimization services that promise to make your application AI-friendly. Some use AI to beat AI, essentially.
It's an arms race. The hiring AI gets smarter, so candidates use AI to game the system. So the hiring AI has to get even smarter to detect gaming. And round we go.
But doesn't that defeat the entire purpose? If everyone's optimizing their resume for the algorithm, doesn't that just create noise?
Absolutely. We're potentially creating a situation where the people who get hired aren't the best candidates, but the candidates who are best at manipulating the algorithm.
No? Okay, but that's not that different from now, is it? People already game the system. They go to the right schools, they network with the right people, they know how to present themselves in interviews. We just pretend it's meritocracy.
That's actually a really important point. Every system can be gamed. The question is whether AI makes it easier or harder to game, and whether the gaming serves any useful purpose.
What do you mean, useful purpose?
Well, think about traditional networking. Yes, it's a form of gaming the system, but it also serves a legitimate function, building relationships, demonstrating communication skills, establishing trust. Resume keyword stuffing doesn't really demonstrate anything except your ability to manipulate text.
Although I'd argue that understanding how to optimize for AI systems is itself a valuable skill in 2032. If AI is everywhere, being able to work with it effectively matters.
I see what you're saying, but it still feels kind of gross. I want to be hired because I'm good at the job, not because I'm good at tricking an algorithm.
Let's flip this around for a second. We've been talking a lot about the problems with AI recruitment, but Iris, you mentioned efficiency gains. What are the actual benefits here? Why are companies so excited about this?
Right, so I don't want to lose sight of the genuine advantages because they're significant. First and most obvious is speed. A human recruiter might spend 15 to 20 minutes reviewing a single resume carefully. An AI can process that same resume in seconds and do it for 10,000 applicants simultaneously.
And not just process, analyze. Modern AI systems can cross-reference a candidate's experience against the actual requirements of the role, identify transferable skills that might not be obvious, even predict cultural fit based on communication patterns and values alignment.
Wait, predict cultural fit? How does that work?
It's based on natural language analysis of how someone communicates, what they prioritize in their descriptions of past work, how they frame challenges and achievements. The AI compares that to successful employees already at the company.
But isn't that just teaching the AI to clone the existing workforce?
It can be, yes, if it's not done carefully. But there are ways to build diversity into the model. You can tell the system to actively seek candidates who bring different perspectives, different backgrounds, different thinking styles.
There's a company, I want to say it was Pymetrics. They developed games that measure cognitive and emotional traits and then match people to roles where those traits predict success. The interesting part is that they build fairness constraints directly into the algorithm.
What does that mean, fairness constraints?
Essentially, they ensure that the algorithm performs equally well across demographic groups. If the AI is better at predicting success for one group than another, they adjust it until the prediction accuracy is balanced.
Okay, that actually sounds pretty good. Why isn't everyone doing that?
Because it's hard, it's expensive, and it requires acknowledging that bias exists in your hiring process. A lot of companies don't want to admit that, or they don't want to invest the resources to fix it properly.
So we have the technology to do this fairly, we're just choosing not to?
It's more complicated than that. We have some tools that can help reduce bias, but we don't have perfect solutions, and there are always trade-offs. Making the system fairer might make it less accurate at predicting who will succeed, at least in the short term.
Although, here's the thing. Less accurate according to what metric? If your historical success metric is biased, then being less accurate at replicating that bias is actually a good thing.
My brain hurts. Okay, let's talk about the candidate experience again, because I keep coming back to Daphne's story about talking to her laptop. Is that really the future we want?
I mean, honestly, some parts of it were actually better than traditional interviews. I didn't have to take a day off work, drive somewhere, sit in a waiting room feeling anxious. I could do it at home, on my schedule.
That's a really important point that gets overlooked. AI recruitment can actually be more accessible for a lot of people. Single parents, people with disabilities, people in different time zones, people who can't afford to travel for interviews.
There was a study from the University of Toronto in 2024 that found that asynchronous AI interviews actually reduced anxiety for some candidates compared to live interviews. The ability to prepare, to redo answers, to control the environment, it leveled the playing field in some ways.
Yeah, but it also created new anxieties, like, am I smiling enough? Am I using the right keywords? Is my lighting okay? It's different stress, not less stress.
So we're trading one set of problems for another set of problems.
Basically, yes, and I think that's the honest answer we have to give about AI recruitment. It's not a silver bullet. It solves some problems while creating new ones.
Can I be real for a second? What scares me most about 2032 isn't the AI itself, it's the lack of humanity in the process. Like, when I got rejected by those 15 companies, I got nothing. No feedback, no explanation, no sense of being seen as a person.
Just an automated email saying thanks but no thanks.
Exactly. And I know rejection is part of job hunting, but there's something uniquely demoralizing about being rejected by an algorithm. At least with a human, you can tell yourself maybe they had a bad day, maybe they missed something. With AI, it feels final, like the machine has objectively determined you're not good enough.
That's actually a psychological phenomenon researchers are studying. We tend to perceive algorithmic decisions as more objective and less changeable than human decisions, even when that's not necessarily true.
And companies are becoming aware of this problem. Some are experimenting with hybrid models where AI does the initial screening, but humans make the final decisions and provide feedback.
Does that actually work, or is it just PR?
It depends on implementation. If the human is just rubber stamping the AI's decisions, it's meaningless. But if there's genuine human judgment in the loop, it can combine the efficiency of AI with the nuance of human evaluation.
Although, you have to wonder about the psychology of that too. If an AI has already filtered out 90% of candidates, are the humans really evaluating objectively, or are they biased by the fact that these candidates have been pre-approved by the algorithm?
Ugh, it's like there's no clean solution here. Every approach has problems.
Maybe that's okay though. Maybe we need to accept that hiring is always going to be imperfect, and the question is just which imperfections we're willing to live with.
I think that's exactly right. The goal shouldn't be perfect AI recruitment, because that doesn't exist. The goal should be AI recruitment that's better than our current system, while acknowledging and actively working to mitigate the new problems it creates.
And being transparent about those problems. That's crucial. If a company is using AI to screen candidates, they should be upfront about it. Tell people how the system works, what it's evaluating, give them a chance to understand the process they're going through.
Do companies actually do that though?
Some do. Mostly smaller, more progressive companies. The big corporations tend to be pretty opaque about their screening processes, whether they're using AI or not.
So as a candidate in 2032, you're basically walking into a black box and hoping for the best?
Unless regulation changes, which it might. There's already talk in the EU about requiring algorithmic transparency in hiring. Candidates would have the right to know if AI is being used and to get an explanation of why they were rejected.
Let's talk about regulation for a minute, because that seems like it could be a game changer. A Elias, what's actually happening on the policy front?
So there's a patchwork of approaches emerging. The EU, as Iris mentioned, is taking the most aggressive stance with their AI Act. It classifies hiring algorithms as high-risk AI systems, which means they're subject to strict requirements around transparency, human oversight, and bias testing.
And importantly, the burden of proof is on the company. They have to demonstrate that their system isn't discriminatory, rather than waiting for someone to prove that it is.
That seems like it would slow things down significantly.
It does, and that's intentional. The philosophy is that moving fast and breaking things is fine for consumer apps, but not when you're making decisions that affect people's livelihoods.
I'm so here for that. Like, please, can we not treat people's careers as experiments?
What about the US? Are we doing anything similar?
The US is taking a much lighter touch, which is typical. There are some city-level regulations. New York City passed a law in 2023 requiring companies to audit their AI hiring tools for bias and disclose their use to candidates. But federal regulation is moving slowly.
And there's a legitimate debate about whether regulation helps or hurts. Some argue that strict rules will push companies back to traditional hiring, which, as we've discussed, has its own massive problems. Others say that without regulation, we'll just encode discrimination at scale.
Where do you fall on that?
I think we need smart regulation, not heavy-handed regulation. Requirements for transparency and bias testing make sense. Banning AI hiring altogether would be throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
What does bias testing even look like for an AI system?
Essentially, you run the algorithm on historical data and check whether it produces different outcomes for different demographic groups. If candidates with equivalent qualifications are rated differently based on race, gender, age, or other protected characteristics, that's a red flag.
The tricky part is defining what equivalent qualifications means, because people from different backgrounds might present their qualifications differently, or have different types of experience that are equally valuable but not obviously comparable.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you're hiring for a management position. Candidate A has an MBA from Harvard and 5 years at a Fortune 500 company. Candidate B has a community college degree, ran their own small business for 5 years, and managed a team of 10. Are those equivalent?
I mean, they're both management experience.
Right, but an AI trained on historical data from a company that usually hires Ivy League MBAs might not recognize candidate B's experience as equivalent, even though in reality, managing your own business might actually be better preparation for some roles.
This is why diverse training data is so important. If the AI only learns from one type of successful candidate, it won't recognize other paths to success.
Okay, but how do you get diverse training data if your company historically hasn't hired diverse candidates?
That's the catch-22. You almost need to manually intervene, hire diverse candidates through other means, let them succeed, and then train your AI on that expanded dataset.
So you have to fix your bias problem before you can use AI to help fix your bias problem.
Essentially, yes. AI can help you scale good hiring practices, but it can't create good hiring practices from scratch.
Let's think about this from the company's perspective for a second. If you're an HR director in 2032, what's your incentive to use AI recruitment responsibly? Because it seems like the easy path is just to maximize efficiency and not worry too much about fairness.
Well, there are a few incentives. One is legal risk. As regulations tighten, companies that use discriminatory AI face lawsuits and penalties. We're already seeing this with some early cases.
There's also reputational risk. In an era where everything is transparent and social media amplifies stories of algorithmic discrimination, companies don't want to be the next viral example of AI gone wrong.
Yeah, but companies say they care about diversity and fairness, but when push comes to shove, do they really?
That's cynical, but probably fair.
I'm not trying to be cynical, I've worked at places that had beautiful diversity statements, and then you look at the actual leadership team and it's all the same demographic. Talk is cheap.
There's actually research on this disconnect. A study from Harvard Business School in 2023 found that companies with strong public commitments to diversity often used AI tools that were statistically biased, and they seemed unaware of the contradiction.
Because they outsource the technology to vendors who promise to solve their hiring problems, and they don't actually audit what the system is doing under the hood.
So you've got companies that think they're being objective and data-driven by using AI, but they're actually just automating their existing bias?
In many cases, yes. And the danger is that the veneer of objectivity makes it harder to challenge. When a human makes a bad hiring decision, you can point to it and say this was biased. When an AI makes the same decision, the response is often, well, the data says this is the best candidate.
But who chose the data? Who decided what to measure? Who built the model? Those are all human decisions infused with human values and biases.
Okay, so this is depressing. Are we just doomed to replicate our biases forever, whether we use AI or not?
It's a pretty existential place to land.
I mean, think about it. We have unconscious bias, so we build AI to be objective, but then we train it on biased data, so it learns our biases, and then we trust it because it's a machine, so the biases get even more entrenched. How do we break that cycle?
I don't think the cycle is unbreakable. It requires intentionality and constant vigilance. You have to actively design for fairness, not just hope it emerges naturally.
And you have to accept that perfect fairness might not be achievable. The goal is continuous improvement, not perfection.
What would continuous improvement look like in practice?
Regular auditing of your AI systems, tracking outcomes over time. If you notice that certain groups are consistently filtered out at higher rates, you investigate why and adjust. You update your training data to include more diverse examples. You get feedback from candidates about their experience.
And critically, you maintain human oversight. AI should augment human decision-making, not replace it entirely.
See, I want to believe that, but I also think about the economics. If AI can do hiring for a fraction of the cost of human recruiters, companies are going to use it, and they're going to minimize the human oversight because that's the expensive part.
That's a really good point, Daphne. The economic pressure to automate is massive. So maybe the question isn't whether AI recruitment will happen, but how we shape it as it happens. What levers do we actually have?
Well, one lever is the market itself. If candidates have bad experiences with AI recruitment at certain companies, they'll avoid those companies. Especially for in-demand roles, companies that treat candidates poorly will lose out on talent.
But that only works if you have options. If you're desperate for a job, you're not going to turn down opportunities because you don't like their AI screening process.
That's true, and it points to a bigger issue about power dynamics. AI recruitment amplifies whoever has more power in the hiring relationship. In a tight labor market where candidates are scarce, companies have to be more careful. In a loose labor market where jobs are scarce, they can do whatever they want.
So we're back to the fundamental problem of labor market economics.
Pretty much, yeah. AI is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used well or poorly. The question of how it gets used is really a question of who has power and what they're incentivized to do.
Although, I do think there's something unique about AI that changes the equation slightly. The scale and speed at which it operates means that bad practices can affect way more people way faster than traditional methods.
Which is terrifying.
It is, but it also means that good practices can spread faster too. If we figure out how to do AI recruitment well, in a way that's actually fairer and more effective, that could scale quickly.
Do we have any examples of companies doing it well, like success stories we can learn from?
There are a few. I mentioned Unilever earlier with their problematic system, but they actually learned from that and rebuilt their approach. They now use AI for initial screening, but combine it with work sample tests and human interviews, and they've been pretty transparent about their process.
IBM is another one. They developed an AI system specifically designed to surface underrepresented talent. Instead of just looking for candidates who match historical successful hires, it actively seeks out people with non-traditional backgrounds who have the right skills.
Wait, that actually sounds good? How does it work?
It focuses on skills and demonstrated abilities rather than credentials and pedigree. So instead of filtering for Harvard MBAs, it looks for evidence that someone can actually do the work, regardless of where they learned it.
And the early results are promising. They've seen increased diversity in their hiring pipeline without any drop in quality of hires. In fact, retention rates actually improved slightly.
So it is possible to use AI to actively counter bias rather than reinforce it.
It's possible, yes, but it requires intentional design and ongoing monitoring. You can't just plug in a generic AI system and expect it to solve your problems.
I'm curious about something. We keep talking about AI like it's this monolithic thing, but there are different approaches, right? Like different companies building different systems?
Ukommenvärdighets algorithmic spring visserlieb how does he use stall?
And at all, I do think there's something unique about AI that changes the equation slightly. The scale and speed at which it operates means that bad practices can affect way more people way faster than traditional methods.
Which is terrifying.
It is, but it also means that good practices can spread faster too. If we figure out how to do AI recruitment well, in a way that's actually fairer and more effective, that could scale quickly.
Do we have any examples of companies doing it well, like success stories we can learn from?
There are a few. I mentioned Unilever earlier with their problematic system, but they actually learned from that and rebuilt their approach. They now use AI for initial screening, but combine it with work sample tests and human interviews. And they've been pretty transparent about their process.
IBM is another one. They developed an AI system specifically designed to surface underrepresented talent. Instead of just looking for candidates who match historical successful hires, it actively seeks out people with non-traditional backgrounds who have the right skills.
Wait, that actually sounds good? How does it work?
It focuses on skills and demonstrated abilities, rather than credentials and pedigree. So instead of filtering for Harvard MBAs, it looks for evidence that someone can actually do the work, regardless of where they learned it.
And the early results are promising. They've seen increased diversity in their hiring pipeline without any drop in quality of hires. In fact, retention rates actually improved slightly.
So it is possible to use AI to actively counter bias rather than reinforce it.
It's possible, yes, but it requires intentional design and ongoing monitoring. You can't just plug in a generic AI system and expect it to solve your problems.
I'm curious about something. We keep talking about AI like it's this monolithic thing, but there are different approaches, right? Like different companies building different systems?
Absolutely. And that's actually part of the problem. There's no standard for what AI recruitment should look like or how it should be evaluated. Every vendor has their own proprietary system, and companies often don't really understand what they're buying.
That seems like a huge gap. If you're making decisions about people's careers, shouldn't you understand the tool you're using?
You would think so, but the reality is that a lot of HR departments don't have the technical expertise to evaluate these systems critically. They rely on the vendor's claims about accuracy and fairness.
Which is why third-party auditing is so important. Having independent researchers evaluate these systems and publish their findings can help companies make informed decisions.
Does that actually happen, though? Like, are these systems being audited by independent researchers?
It's starting to happen more, especially as regulation pushes in that direction. But we're still in the early stages. A lot of these systems operate as black boxes.
Let's talk about the candidate side again. If I'm job hunting in 2032, and I know I'm going to be screened by AI, what can I actually do to improve my chances? Beyond gaming the system, which we already discussed.
Honestly, I think understanding the system is half the battle. Like, if you know you're being evaluated by AI, you present yourself differently. You make sure your resume is clean and parsable, you use industry standard terminology, you quantify your achievements.
That's all good advice regardless of AI, actually. Clear, quantifiable descriptions of your work are valuable for human recruiters too.
But there are some AI-specific considerations. Things like resume formatting matter more than they used to. If the AI can't parse your creative resume design, you're filtered out before anyone sees your qualifications.
So creativity in resume design is actually a liability now.
In some cases, yes, which is unfortunate because it means everyone's resume starts to look the same. We lose individuality in favor of machine readability.
Ugh, that's so depressing. Like we're all optimizing to become the same bland version of a candidate.
It doesn't have to be that way, though. You can be machine readable and still show personality. It's just a different skill set.
What about networking? Does traditional networking still matter in an AI recruitment world?
It matters even more, actually. Because if you can bypass the AI screening entirely by getting a referral or direct connection to a hiring manager, you avoid all the potential algorithmic bias.
So privilege still wins. The people who have access to networks and connections get to skip the AI gauntlet, and everyone else has to face it.
That's kind of a damning indictment of the whole system.
It is, but again, that's not unique to AI. Networking has always been a major advantage in hiring. AI doesn't change that fundamental reality, although it might make it worse, because now there are two separate tracks. The network track where humans vouch for humans, and the AI track where everyone else gets algorithmically sorted.
And I'm guessing the AI track is going to be harsher and less forgiving.
Potentially, yes. Although some companies are trying to use AI to level the playing field, to give people without networks a fair shot based purely on merit.
Do you believe that's actually happening?
I believe some companies are genuinely trying. Whether they're succeeding is a different question. The gap between intention and execution is often pretty wide.
Let's zoom out for a second. We've been talking about the mechanics of AI recruitment, but what does this mean for the future of work more broadly? Like if AI is screening candidates, what else is it doing?
Oh, that's a whole other conversation, but you're right to connect them. AI recruitment is just one piece of a larger transformation in how work gets organized, evaluated, and compensated.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. If AI can evaluate candidates, it can also evaluate current employees. Performance reviews, promotion decisions, compensation adjustments, all of that could be algorithmically driven.
Some companies are already doing this. They're using AI to analyze productivity metrics, communication patterns, even sentiment in emails and messages to evaluate employee performance.
Wait, they're analyzing sentiment in emails? That seems invasive.
It is invasive, and there are major privacy concerns. But from the company's perspective, they're just using available data to make better decisions.
Okay, but this is getting into dystopian territory. Like, at what point are we just surveilling employees constantly and using AI to rate everything they do?
We're already closer to that than most people realize. Companies have keystroke monitoring, time tracking software, AI that analyzes video calls to measure engagement. The technology exists and it's being used.
This is making me profoundly uncomfortable.
Good. It should, because we haven't had the societal conversation about what level of workplace surveillance is acceptable. The technology is moving faster than our ethical frameworks.
Although, there's an argument that this kind of monitoring could actually be fairer in some ways. Instead of relying on manager bias or office politics, you're evaluated on objective metrics.
Iris, come on. You don't actually believe that.
I'm not saying I love it, I'm saying there are trade-offs. Subjective performance reviews are incredibly biased. Women and minorities consistently get less favorable reviews for the same work. If AI could evaluate performance more objectively...
But it won't be objective. We've already established that AI learns bias from data. So now instead of my manager being biased against me, the algorithm will be, and I won't even be able to argue with it because it's just the data.
Daphne's right. Objective sounds good in theory, but we've seen that algorithmic objectivity is often just bias in disguise.
What's interesting to me is how this changes power dynamics. In a traditional workplace, you can push back against your manager, you can appeal decisions, you can use office politics to your advantage. But how do you negotiate with an algorithm?
You can't, really. That's the point. The algorithm is designed to be impartial and consistent.
Which is great if the algorithm is actually fair, but terrifying if it's not.
So let's bring this back to recruitment. If companies are using AI not just for hiring, but for ongoing employee evaluation, what does that mean for someone entering the workforce in 2032?
It means you're never not being evaluated. From the moment you apply for a job through your entire tenure at the company, AI systems are constantly analyzing your performance, your communication, your potential.
That sounds exhausting.
It does, doesn't it? And there's research suggesting that constant surveillance and evaluation actually decreases performance and increases stress. So we might be optimizing for the wrong things.
But here's a counterpoint. If the evaluation is constant, then one bad day or one mistake doesn't define you. The algorithm looks at patterns over time, not individual incidents.
That's actually a fair point.
With human managers, you can have one bad interaction that colors their perception of you forever. AI doesn't hold grudges or have bad days where it evaluates you more harshly.
I see what you're saying, but I still think the human element matters. Like, a good manager can understand context. They know if you're going through something difficult, if you're in a challenging project phase, if external factors are affecting your work. Can AI understand that?
Theoretically, yes, if it has access to enough data and is programmed to account for context. But in practice, most AI systems are looking for patterns and deviations, not nuanced understanding of individual circumstances.
This is making me think about something. We talk about AI making hiring more efficient, but efficient for whom? It's definitely more efficient for companies, but is it more efficient for candidates?
No, it's way less efficient for candidates. You're applying to more jobs because you can, but you're also getting rejected more, usually without feedback. So you're spending more time on applications that go nowhere.
That's actually a really important point that doesn't get discussed enough. AI recruitment has created an application inflation problem. Because it's so easy to apply to hundreds of jobs, everyone does it, which means companies are flooded with applications, which means they need AI to filter them, which creates more rejection, which means candidates apply to even more jobs.
It's a vicious cycle, and the result is that the application process has become almost meaningless. You're just throwing your resume into a void and hoping the algorithm smiles upon you.
So how do we fix that? Or can we fix it?
Some companies are experimenting with more involved initial applications. Instead of just submitting a resume, you complete a work sample or answer detailed questions. It takes longer, but it filters out the spray and pray applicants.
Which is great if you're applying to 1 or 2 jobs, but if you're unemployed and need to apply broadly, that's not realistic.
That's the fundamental tension. Companies want applicants to invest time up front to prove they're serious. Candidates want to cast a wide net to maximize their chances. AI was supposed to solve this by making screening faster, but it just shifted the problem.
Shifted it how?
Instead of companies spending time screening resumes, candidates spend time applying to tons of jobs. Instead of human recruiters being overwhelmed, AI systems are doing the filtering. The inefficiency didn't go away, it just moved.
And in the process, we lost the human connection that used to exist in hiring. Like, my dad tells stories about walking into companies, talking to the receptionist, getting introduced to the hiring manager. That doesn't happen anymore.
It really doesn't, and there's something lost in that. The informal networks, the chance encounters, the human judgment calls that sometimes led to great hires who didn't fit the traditional mold.
So are we saying AI recruitment is just bad? After all this discussion, is the conclusion that we shouldn't be doing it?
No, I don't think that's the conclusion. I think the conclusion is that AI recruitment is a powerful tool that we're not using very well yet. We're in the awkward early phase where the technology exists, but the wisdom to use it responsibly hasn't caught up.
So if we're in this awkward early phase, what does the mature phase look like? What's the best case scenario for AI recruitment in 2032?
Best case, AI handles the truly mechanical parts of screening, making sure applications are complete, checking that basic qualifications are met, scheduling interviews. But humans remain deeply involved in the evaluation process, especially for final decisions.
And critically, there's transparency. Candidates know when AI is being used, understand what criteria they're being evaluated on, and have the ability to appeal or provide context when they're filtered out.
That sounds reasonable, actually. Like, I don't mind AI doing the administrative stuff if it means humans are making the actual judgment calls about whether I'm a good fit.
What about worst case scenario?
Worst case is full automation with no human oversight, proprietary black box algorithms that nobody understands, including the companies using them, and candidates having zero visibility into why they're rejected or any recourse to challenge decisions.
And on top of that, the AI systems encode and amplify existing biases, making it even harder for underrepresented groups to break into certain fields or companies.
So basically, we automate discrimination and call it efficiency.
That's the nightmare scenario, yes. And we're closer to that reality than the best case scenario right now.
That's depressing. What moves us toward the best case and away from the worst case?
Regulation is part of it. But honestly, I think it's more about culture and values. Companies have to genuinely care about fairness and be willing to invest in doing it right, even when it's more expensive or complicated.
Do you think that'll happen though? Like, do companies actually care enough?
Some do, and market pressure can push others in that direction. If the best talent refuses to work for companies with opaque, unfair AI recruitment practices, those companies will have to change.
Although that only works if labor has power, which brings us back to the fundamental economic question. In a tight labor market, yes, candidates can be choosy. In a recession, they can't.
So we're dependent on economic conditions for ethical AI recruitment?
To some extent, yes, which is why regulation matters. It sets a floor that companies can't fall below regardless of economic conditions.
I want to talk about something personal for a second, because all this theory is important, but I keep thinking about what it actually feels like to be on the receiving end of these systems, and it's dehumanizing, honestly.
How so?
When you apply to a job and never hear back, or you get an instant rejection, or you do a video interview talking to a camera with no one on the other side, it makes you feel like you're not a person. You're just data points to be processed.
That's a really important perspective. The emotional and psychological impact of AI recruitment is something we haven't studied enough.
Like, job searching is already stressful and vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there hoping someone will see your value, and when that someone is an algorithm that reduces you to keywords and metrics, it's alienating.
There's actually a term for this in sociology, algorithmic alienation. The sense of powerlessness and depersonalization that comes from being evaluated by systems you don't understand and can't appeal to.
That's a great term for what Daphne's describing.
And I think this matters for companies too, not just candidates. Because if your hiring process makes people feel dehumanized, even the people you do hire might come in with a bad taste in their mouth.
Absolutely. The candidate experience affects employer brand. Companies that are known for having terrible application processes struggle to attract top talent.
Although again, that only matters if talent is scarce. If unemployment is high and jobs are scarce, companies can treat candidates poorly and people will still apply.
You keep coming back to that power dynamic, Elias.
Because it's fundamental. Technology doesn't exist in a vacuum. The impact of AI recruitment depends entirely on who has power and how they choose to use it.
But technology can shift power dynamics. That's important to remember. AI recruitment could potentially democratize access to opportunities by reducing the importance of networks and connections.
Could, but will it?
That's the question we'll be answering over the next decade. The technology is neutral. It's how we choose to deploy it that matters.
I'm not sure I agree that technology is neutral, but I get your point.
Yeah, the neutral technology argument is pretty contested. Technologies encode the values and biases of their creators. But Iris's broader point stands. We have agency in how we use these tools.
Let's talk about practical advice for a minute. If someone listening to this is going to be job hunting between now and 2032, what should they actually do?
Learn how AI screening works. There are resources online that explain how applicant tracking systems parse resumes, what keywords matter, how to format your application to be machine readable.
But also maintain your humanity in the process. Don't optimize yourself into blandness. Companies still want interesting, creative people, not robots who've perfectly gamed the algorithm.
Network aggressively. Referrals and personal connections are still the best way to bypass AI screening entirely. And honestly, that's likely to remain true in 2032.
So the advice is game the system, but not too much, and also try to avoid the system entirely?
Basically, yeah, which is not great advice, but it's the reality.
I would add, be strategic about where you apply. Research companies' hiring practices. Some are more transparent and thoughtful about their use of AI than others. Target those companies.
And advocate for better systems. If you go through a terrible AI recruitment process, give feedback, write reviews, make noise. Companies respond to reputational pressure.
Do they, though? Like, does complaining about bad hiring practices actually change anything?
In aggregate, yes. Individual complaints might not move the needle, but widespread criticism and bad publicity can prompt companies to rethink their approaches.
What about on the policy level? If someone wants to push for better regulation of AI recruitment, what should they be advocating for?
Transparency requirements, definitely. Candidates should have the right to know when AI is being used and how decisions are made.
Auditing requirements. Companies should have to regularly test their systems for bias and publish the results.
And the right to human review. If an AI rejects you, you should be able to request that a human look at your application.
That all sounds good. Will it actually happen?
Some of it is already happening in certain jurisdictions. The question is whether it spreads or whether we end up with a patchwork of different regulations in different places.
Which would be its own problem, because companies could just jurisdiction shop, recruit from places with looser regulation. Let's bring this home. We've covered a lot of ground here: the technology, the bias, the economics, the human impact. What's the one thing you want people to take away from this conversation?
I think the main takeaway is that AI recruitment is inevitable, but how it evolves is not predetermined. We have choices to make about what kind of systems we build and what values we prioritize. Efficiency is important, but so is fairness. Speed matters, but so does humanity.
And I would add, don't trust AI blindly, but don't dismiss it entirely either. These systems can be powerful tools for good if we use them thoughtfully. The key is maintaining critical awareness of their limitations and biases.
For me, it's about remembering that there are real people on the other end of these algorithms. Every resume that gets filtered out is a person with hopes and bills to pay and skills to offer. We can't lose sight of that humanity in the pursuit of efficiency.
Those are all really important points. I think what strikes me most is the tension between what AI recruitment could be and what it currently is. Like, we have this technology that theoretically could make hiring more fair, more efficient, more accessible, but in practice, it's often doing the opposite.
That gap between potential and reality is where the work needs to happen. And it's not just technical work, it's social, ethical, political work. We need to collectively decide what we want from these systems.
And we need to be realistic about trade-offs. There's no perfect system. Every approach has downsides. The question is which downsides we're willing to accept and which we're not.
I keep thinking about that study you mentioned, Elias. The one where AI-hired employees had lower retention initially, but better long-term outcomes. That's kind of fascinating, right?
It is. It suggests that AI might be seeing something that human recruiters miss, but it also raises questions about what we're optimizing for. Is short-term retention more important than long-term performance? Who decides that?
And those decisions are being made right now, often by tech companies and HR departments, without much public input or oversight.
Which is why the regulatory conversation is so important. These systems affect millions of people. They should be subject to democratic deliberation and public accountability.
Do you think we'll get there? Real oversight and accountability?
I think we're moving in that direction, but it's going to be messy and incomplete. Different countries will take different approaches. Some companies will be more responsible than others. It's not going to be a clean, uniform solution.
And technology will keep evolving faster than regulation can keep up. By the time we've figured out how to regulate today's AI recruitment tools, there will be new capabilities that raise new questions.
So we're always playing catch-up?
Basically, yes. Which is frustrating, but also just the reality of living through a period of rapid technological change.
What about the emotional side of this? Because we've talked a lot about the practical and ethical dimensions, but I think the psychological impact is huge and underexplored.
What are you thinking specifically?
Well, like, what does it do to people's sense of self-worth when they're constantly being evaluated and rejected by algorithms? When you can't even get feedback on why you were filtered out? That's gotta have mental health implications.
You're absolutely right. There's emerging research on the psychological effects of algorithmic decision-making, and it's concerning. People report feeling more helpless and demoralized when rejected by AI compared to human rejection.
even though, logically, rejection is rejection regardless of the source.
Right, but there's something about algorithmic rejection that feels more absolute, more final. Like the universe itself has determined you're not good enough, rather than just one person's opinion.
Exactly. And that can really mess with your head, especially if you're going through a tough job search.
So what's the solution there? Better feedback from AI systems?
That would help, definitely. Even generic feedback is better than nothing. Like your application was strong in these areas, but weaker in these areas. Here's what we were looking for.
Although there's a practical challenge there, companies are worried about legal liability. If they tell you why you were rejected, they open themselves up to discrimination claims.
Which is ironic, because the lack of transparency makes discrimination more likely, not less.
It's all interconnected. The legal concerns drive opacity, the opacity enables bias, the bias creates legal exposure. Another vicious cycle.
Breaking these cycles requires coordination across multiple domains. Legal frameworks, technical standards, corporate practices, worker advocacy, they all have to move together.
Which is hard to achieve, but not impossible. We've done it before with other technologies. Safety standards for cars, privacy regulations for data, accessibility requirements for websites. These things can happen when there's sufficient public pressure and political will.
So you're optimistic about 2032?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we'll have better AI recruitment systems than we have today, with more guardrails and oversight. But I don't think we'll have solved all the problems. It'll be an ongoing process of refinement and adjustment.
I'm less optimistic, honestly. I think the economic incentives push toward automation and cost cutting, and fairness takes a back seat. But I hope I'm wrong.
I think the reality will be somewhere in the middle. Some companies will do it well, some will do it poorly. Some sectors will be more regulated, some less. It'll be uneven and messy, but with pockets of genuine progress.
That seems like a reasonable prediction. Messy progress is still progress.
I guess. I just wish we could guarantee that the progress benefits everyone, not just the people who already have advantages.
That's the challenge with any new technology. The people with resources and knowledge figure out how to use it to their advantage first. Spreading those benefits more broadly takes time and effort.
Well, on that note, let's wrap up. We've covered a lot today: the mechanics of AI recruitment, the bias challenges, the economic forces at play, the human impact, and what the future might hold. If you're listening to this and you're thinking about your own career, your own job search, hopefully this gives you some framework for understanding what you're dealing with.
And if you're in a position to influence hiring practices, whether as an HR professional, a manager, or a policymaker, I hope this conversation highlights why thoughtful implementation matters so much.
These systems are powerful. They can do tremendous good or tremendous harm. The choice is ours.
And remember, behind every algorithm is a person. Behind every resume is a person. We can't lose sight of that humanity, no matter how sophisticated the technology gets.
Beautifully said, Daphne. All right, everyone, that's our show for today. Thanks for listening. If you found this conversation valuable, share it with someone who's navigating the job market or thinking about these questions. And if you have experiences with AI recruitment, good or bad, we'd love to hear them.
These conversations matter. The more we talk about these issues openly, the more likely we are to build systems that actually work for everyone.
Until next time, stay curious and stay critical.
And good luck out there. Whether you're talking to a human recruiter or an AI, you've got this.
Thanks, Adrian, Iris, Elias, and Daphne. We'll see you next week.